How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, September 19th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Stephon Gilmore. The elite cornerback for the New England Patriots turns 31 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to bring up and bring to light everything that he's been able to accomplish and achieve from the moment he stepped foot in the University of South Carolina to where he is right now, a Super Bowl champion, a dude who's been named the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And then let's not forget, how many people even make it, let's not forget how many college football players there are, let alone in D1, just let alone college football players in America, people that make it to the draft, people that can actually make it onto an NFL roster following training camp, and let alone out of the players that can earn starting jobs in the league. Yeah, the fact that he's this good, I think it's not a question why Stephon Gilmore is on the list of elite athletes, especially because he's a player that sticks out in his own sport. He stands at about 6'1", 202 pounds. He's a very quiet guy, but you can tell that he's a guy that's very focused. He definitely works on his craft. He's very physical, very intelligent, and of course, working with Bill Belichick, he knows what he's doing. And the fact that the New England Patriots can trust him on virtually any receiver, even now as he's entering his 30s, should most definitely say something. And I don't know, I have the utmost respect for what Stephon Gilmore has done. After considering when he came in, not that many people were really held them high in their regards, even though he was a top 10 pick in the draft. So without further ado, just getting into a little bit of the background. He's originally from Rock Hill, South Carolina. He would end up being the Mr. Football for all of South Carolina, which would earn him a scholarship to go play football at the University of South Carolina. He was playing there under Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier was there from 2005 to 2014. And looking at what Stephon Gilmore was able to do. In his freshman season in 2009, he would end up starting after he was the South Carolina Football Player of the Year. And he was a rare true freshman to start at corner in the SEC, considering it is the SEC. In the 13 games he played, he finished with 56 tackles on the season, 3 sacks on the year. He even had an interception in his first year. Following his first season, South Carolina would end up losing the Papa John's Bowl versus Connecticut after they finished with a 7-6 record. Going into Stephon Gilmore's second season, he would go on to help South Carolina win the SEC East as they finished with a 9-5 record. In the 14 games he played, he finished with 79 tackles on the season, which was about 23 more than he had his freshman year. He had 6 tackles for loss and 3 sacks, which is identical to what he did his previous year. He would finish with 3 picks, and he would end up taking home his only pick 6 of the year in his sophomore season. Like I said, they would go on to win the SEC championship, but they would go on to lose the 2010 Chick-fil-A Bowl versus Florida State after they finished as the 22nd ranked team in the nation. And at the conclusion of the season in 2010, Stephon Gilmore was named to the first team All-SEC. And following his sophomore season, he would return for his last year of eligibility. His junior season at South Carolina, he would play 13 games, all 13 of the games, in a season where they finished with an 11-2 record, the best record that they'd had since he'd been there. They would finish as a top 10 team in the nation, and they finished the season beating Nebraska in the Capital One Bowl. In Stephon Gilmore's junior season, he would finish with 46 tackles on the season, which is less than he had his freshman or sophomore seasons. He would end up with a sack on the season. He had 4 interceptions, which is more than he had his sophomore season. At the end of 2011, he would establish himself as he would be a first-team All-SEC for the second year in a row. Not very common. You see people getting first-team All-SEC in defensive positions if they don't play for Alabama, Florida, LSU, Georgia. Let me know if I missed any. But the fact that he was doing all this at South Carolina and helping them finish as a top 10. Obviously, they had other players, but Stephon Gilmore was a big part of the reasons why that they were that good. Following that season, he was taken as the number 10 overall pick in the 2012 draft. Looking at other players that were taken, Andrew Luck was the number 1 pick in that draft. RG3 was taken with the Redskins with the 2nd pick. Then Luke Kuechly was the pick right before him as he went to the Carolina Panthers at number 9. Dontari Poe, who went to the Kansas City Chiefs, was the pick right after him. The elite defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, Fletcher Cox, was taken 2 picks after Stephon Gilmore with the 12th pick. Chandler Jones was taken with the 21st pick by the New England Patriots that year. And Harrison Smith, the elite safety for the Vikings, was taken with the 29th overall pick in that draft. Just looking at the talent that he was surrounded by, and of course he was deemed a first-round talent. And he was drafted by the Buffalo Bills, and he would go on to play his very first 5 seasons in his career with the Buffalo Bills. In his first season, he would start all 16 games in a season where the Bills would finish with a 6-10 record. Under Chan Gailey's last season as head coach, Stephon Gilmore would go on to finish with 61 tackles on the season. He had 16 passes defended in his first season, which is amongst the highest that he's ever put together in a season. And he would also have an interception at the conclusion of 2012. Following that season, he would go on to return for his 2nd year at Buffalo. In 2013, in his age 23 season, he would start 9 of the 11 games he played in a season where the Bills finished with a 6-10 record for the 2nd year in a row. This was when Kiko Alonso was given the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. But regardless, for the Bills that season, in that season, Stephon Gilmore would finish with 35 tackles on the season. He would finish with 10 passes defended. He even recovered a fumble that year. And he would go on to finish with 2 interceptions, which won up to his rookie season just by a pick. Following that 2013 season, he would come back for what will be his 3rd season in Buffalo. In his age 24 season, in 2014, he would start all 14 of the games he would play in a season where the Bills would finish with a 9-7 record. This was Doug Marrone's 2nd and final season as the Bills head coach. And in this season, Stephon Gilmore would go on to finish with 46 tackles on the season. He would force a fumble this season which is the 3rd time he'd do it because he forced 2 his rookie season. He finished with 6 passes defended on the year, and he would go on to up his career high in interceptions to 3 this season. So you'd see him start to be more consistent with his output. But at the end of the season, they didn't make the playoffs. This would transition into his 4th season with the Buffalo Bills in 2015. And in his age 25 season, he would start all 12 of the games he played in as the Bills would finish with an 8-8 record. This was the lone season where Rex Ryan coached the entire season. In their 8-8 season, Stephon Gilmore would go on to finish with 36 tackles on the season, 18 passes defensed, which would be his career high at that point. He would finish with 3 interceptions, which tied him with what he did the year before. But even by the end of 2015, he was starting to hit the radars of many of the people that were watching him. And that was his career until he became a Pro Bowler, and that was kind of just like the first half. Everything kind of switched going into his 5th and final season at Buffalo. In 2016, he would start all 15 of the games that he played in a season where the Buffalo Bills finished with a 7-9 record. Rex Ryan started the season. Anthony Lynn coached the last game. In that season, Stephon Gilmore would finish with 48 tackles on the season, which is roughly what he was doing the other years. He had 12 passes defensed, which was a little lower than what he did the previous season. But this year, he would end up with 5 interceptions, the first time he ever eclipsed the 5 interception mark. And by doing that, he would be named a Pro Bowler at the cornerback position for the very first time in his NFL career. Following his 5-year stint in Buffalo, in which he had not made the playoffs at all, he would go on to sign a 5-year deal with the New England Patriots in 2017. And going into his very first season in New England, Stephon Gilmore would go on to start all 13 of the games he played in a season where the New England Patriots would go on to finished with a 13-3 record. This was the year after they had beat the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. But in this regular season, this was the most recent season in which Tom Brady won MVP of the league. In this season, Stephon Gilmore would finish with 50 tackles on the year. He finished with 2 picks, 9 passes defended, and in his very first season in New England, he was not necessarily named a Pro Bowler, but he was still a very important part to a New England Patriots side that made it deep into the playoffs. In the first round, they would end up beating Derrick Henry and the Titans 35-14. In the second round, or in the AFC Championship, they would end up beating the Jaguars 24-20. And then they would end up losing in the Super Bowl to the Eagles. And that was when Nick Foles ran the Philadelphia Special and earned himself a trophy despite not even being the starting quarterback that got the Eagles to the playoffs in the first place. Following his first season in New England, Stephon Gilmore has been a Pro Bowler with the New England Patriots the last 3 seasons. Going into his second season with New England in his age 28 season in 2018, Stephon Gilmore would go on to start all 16 of the games he played in a season where the Patriots finished with an 11-5 record. They would go on to win the AFC East yet again, the second time straight since Stephon Gilmore was there. And I don't know, the 18th, 19th, don't take that seriously. That's just hyperbole when we're talking about Tom Brady's teams. In this 11-5 season, Stephon Gilmore would finish with 45 tackles on the year. He finished with his first and his only career sack of the season in 2018. He would have 2 interceptions on the year, along with 20 passes defended. That would go on to be his career high, and it's actually tied with his career high that he would put up the next season. So in addition to doing that and defending 20 passes for a New England Patriots team that would go on to make it to the playoffs, he would go on to be not only named a Pro Bowler, but he will go on to be named a first-team All-Pro, which meant that he was either the best or the second best corner in all of football that season, the first time he was ever given an honor that high. And once the New England Patriots made it to the playoffs, they did go on to win the Super Bowl. But first, they would beat the Chargers in the divisional round 41-28. They would go on to beat the Chiefs in the championship game thanks to a coin toss in overtime. And then they would go on to beat the Rams in Atlanta in Super Bowl 53. Julian Edelman took home the Super Bowl MVP. And the fact that the year that he became a Super Bowl champion was the year that he established himself as one of the league's best defensive players is not a coincidence. And this would go on to which would arguably be his best defensive season in 2019. This would be his 3rd season with the New England Patriots, and this would go on to be his 8th season in the NFL. In 2019, he would start all 16 of the games he played in a season where the New England Patriots would finish with a 12-4 record, winning the AFC East. That's the last time to date that the Patriots have won the AFC East. In his 2019 season, he would go on to start all 16 games. And in 2019, before I get into it, he would go on to... Actually, I'll get into it. In 2019, he finished with 53 tackles on the season. He would finish with 20 passes defended, which is tied with his career high that he put up the previous season. And this time, he would actually lead the league in doing so. And in addition to leading the league in passes defended, he would actually be tied for the league high in interceptions. He had 6 of them, and he returned 2 of them for pick sixes. So, of course, that would help as well. And at the conclusion of the 2019 season, he was named to the first-team All-Pro for the 2nd year in a row. And he would go on to be named the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. Thus far, the only time that he's been named the Defensive Player of the Year in his life to date. And in 2019, after he was gifted the most prestigious award that you can give to any defensive player, the New England Patriots would go on to lose their very first playoff matchup against the Tennessee Titans. And after that, Tom Brady would go on to leave for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which would transition them into the post-Tom Brady era, which leads us into the 2020 season, which many people are aware was impacted by COVID to the point where fans weren't really there in the stands, but they still had to deal with all the COVID protocol and it was a very tough season to get through. And in his age 30 season, Stephon Gilmore would go on to start all 11 of the games he played for a New England Patriots team that finished with a 7-9 record, missing the playoffs for the first time since 2008, and even that year they went 11-5. It's the first losing record the team has had since 2000. And in Stephon Gilmore's most recent season, he would go on to be named a Pro Bowler for the third year in a row and for the fourth time in a 5-year stretch in the back half of the 2010s. He would go on to finish with 37 tackles on the season. He had 3 passes defended, 1 interception. He even forced a fumble. And like I said, the New England Patriots would not go on to make the playoffs, and this would lead us to where we currently are now. As coming into this 2021 season, Stephon Gilmore was placed on the injury reserve, due to the quad injury that he underwent at the end of the 2020 season, which actually cut his last season short. But Stephon Gilmore has not yet played in the NFL this season, but I imagine he'll be coming back at any time now. And once he does come back, he is a menace on the field. I mean, many people are aware that he is one of the most dominant players, at least in his position at this very moment. People don't win 4 Pro Bowls or people don't get named to the Pro Bowl 4 times in a 5-year span on accident. And I think that that's really the argument that I would use to reassure why I have Stephon Gilmore on this list of players that are just more elite than just like than even the best football players that walk the earth. And I think that's the best way to kind of define his legacy. And first, I want to thank the Football Reference websites, College and Pro. I want to thank the NFL website as well, and of course the Wikipedia page that I use to pull up the Bills and the England and the Patriots seasons. And of course, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 16 minutes of this piece. Of course, I hope all is well. Once all of today's episode, or once all these matchups and exhibitions are done, I will come back tomorrow on Monday, September 20th, just to go over everything that went down today. But for the moment, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to this piece. I want to wish Stephon Gilmore a happy 31st birthday, and if you ever get a chance to watch him, he's wearing 24 for the New England Patriots. And then when you get a chance to see him, just remember that I listed him as one of the elites. Thanks for listening to my piece. Once again, today is Sunday, September 19th. I'm James Sims. Thanks for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.